An efficient system. That's the key to a busy bakery, and that's the key to better and more efficient genealogy research. Now, over on the website, I have mentioned in a post that I have loved all things fixer-upper over the years and Chip and Joanna Gaines. I've even been to Waco, Texas, and to the big Magnolia complex. But who knew that genealogy and DIY home shows had so much in common? Well, I'm going to show you how. Hey there, if we haven't met before, I am Lisa with Are You My Cousin, the YouTube channel and website. This YouTube channel is designed to help you find your ancestor, grow your family tree, but not get overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you're in the right place. Now let's talk about the best cupcake ever. It's a campfire s'mores cupcake. It's full of chocolatey goodness. It's topped by a homemade toasted marshmallow. And I got it at the bakery at the Silos in Waco, Texas. Now, when my daughter and I got a chance to visit the Silos in Waco, Texas, the Magnolia complex and the Magnolia store of Chip and Joanna Gaines, we jumped at the chance. And of course, we had to visit the bakery. Now, as usual, there was a pretty long line to get into the bakery. In fact, it wrapped around the outside of the building. We didn't really care how long that line was. We took our place at the end of the line because, well, cupcakes were at stake. And just so you know, I blame the ancestors for my sweet tooth. Just saying. Anyway, that line moved fast. In very short order, my daughter and I were feasting on our respective cupcakes. Now, as I was in that line, and I watched it move forward and watched the bakery staff once we got inside the door and watched them moving the people along, I realized that they were amazingly efficient in what they did. Starting in the line, we actually were giving a little menu card with pencils, and we were able to circle what our order was. Once up at the counter, we handed over the card, moved down, and in short order, we picked up our cupcakes, paid, and off we went. They had a system, they had a workflow within the bakery itself and behind the scenes, and it just was repeated over and over and over. The steps were followed repeatedly. They had an efficient system, and that's the key to that busy bakery. And again, like I said at the top of this video, that is the key to our genealogy research. Systems, workflows, and repeat. Nothing gets left out and nothing gets missed. So let me ask you this quick question. Do you tend to, when you have a few extra minutes and you sit down to research, do you tend to kind of go at it, well, shall we say willy-nilly? Do you have a plan for each time you sit down to research your ancestors, whether it's 5 minutes of research or whether it's 5 hours? When we have a genealogy workflow or a genealogy system in place, we can become more efficient with our time. We can become more efficient with our work. When we have our own genealogy research workflows, our own systems in place and well established, we can become as efficient at research as that bakery is at selling cupcakes. And of course, then we have more time to eat cupcakes. So what does a genealogy workflow look like? Well, let me give you an example of what it would look like, what my genealogy workflow, my system for research, when I sit down at my computer to search for ancestors. Now, you've heard me talk before that in previous videos, and I will link it in the corner above, that I always start with a research plan. So I'm big on having a plan. I think it's absolutely crucial that we have a genealogy research plan. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that video, be sure and head over there afterwards to see that. But I always have my plan ready to go. As soon as I sit down for a research session, the first thing that I do is I pull up my research plan and I look at the plan and see where I am in that plan. I remind myself of my vision, or I remind myself of my goal for that research project and where I am in that process. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start the search of the needed records. So I will have made a mark or indicated on my research plan and from my previous session where it is I want to start. And so I will start at that point in my research plan. So I search for that needed record, I find the record that I'm interested in, and before I get too far into it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write the citation for that record. Now, I recommend that you do this first at the beginning when you find that record, as opposed to waiting till the end of your research session, because you're going to get in a hurry, you're more likely to forget. And remember, when it comes to citing that source, the important thing here is that you know where you got it from, and that you can come back to it again in the future if you need to. So you want to make sure you're documenting where you found that particular item and that particular fact about your ancestor. That's the reason we cite our sources. Once I've got that record, I've cited my source, so I know where I can come back to it. I get into that record. I'm going to go ahead and evaluate, analyze that record, and pull out the needed information that I've got. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and download that particular record if it is on my computer. If I happen to be perhaps at an archive and I'm using an original record, I'm going to go ahead and request a copy be made. Once I've got that downloaded into my computer, I'm going to label it. I'm going to put it in the appropriate file folder right then. Don't get caught in the trap that I've done in the past where I download something, I get called away, I think, okay, oh, I'll file all these at the end, and I put them in the right place. And then they get lost somewhere in my download folder on my computer, and it takes me forever to find them once again. Go ahead, as soon as you download it, get it labeled the way you like to label your documents, and get it filed in the appropriate folder, the folder your system that you use. At this point, I'm also going to then add that record to my family tree if applicable. So if I'm doing that research online, I'm using the online databases such as Ancestry, such as MyHeritage or Find My Past, I can obviously attach it directly within the database. But I do add it, if necessary, perhaps I'm offline, then I'm going to go ahead and add it to my Family Tree Maker software that way as well. And then I'm going to repeat the same process with the next record for as long as I have for my research session. Now, when my research session is over, this is the next part of my workflow that I do. And that is, one, I review what I have found for that day. So I review what I looked at, I reviewed what I found. Maybe I'm reviewing what I didn't find, the negative evidence, but I'm reviewing what I found. And then I'm updating my research plan. Now you may notice that this workflow started with the research plan. It started with reviewing my research plan, but it also ends with my research plan. That is not a coincidence. That is planned, that is intentional, and that is a crucial step in my research process. Now, this is just an example of how I research when I sit down and I'm researching on my desktop in my office. You can also create a checklist for analyzing a document and the steps that you want to go through for that analysis. Now, these are some things that we can dive into in future videos, and if that is something you would like me to go over in future videos, just type the word checklist in the comments below, and that way I'll know that you're interested in me delving out and going a little bit deeper into some of these checklist items. I want you to give some workflows and systems into your genealogy research a try. Take that basic workflow that I mentioned at the beginning. Again, this does not have to be some elaborate thing. It just has to be a series of steps that you can take comfortably to make sure that you're staying on track with your research and that you're getting everything you need within that research session. So that when you complete that research session, start the next one, you're not losing any time. You can jump right in at the right spot and you know where things are and you know where you are in your research and can continue with the plan. And remember, there is no right or wrong system. As long as it's the system that works for you and the steps make sense to you, that's fine. That is wonderful. You may want to detail every single step, but you may just want to hit the highlights, and that's perfectly fine either way. So you want to give those a try, because what makes a good system is the system that works for you and one that you actually use. Now learn more about creating those critical genealogy research plans in this video that's on the screen now. Now back to that s'mores cupcake that I mentioned earlier. Yes, it was one of the best cupcakes I have ever tried. But I can also tell you that the sugar crash later in the afternoon was real.